Good afternoon, welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Every February the 14th, we celebrate the birthday of Frederick Douglass. Douglass's legacy is one of remarkable resilience, intellect, and moral clarity. He was born into slavery. He not only escaped its grip, he became one of the most powerful voices against it. His willingness to stand against injustice extended beyond abolition. He advocated for voting rights, for African American voting rights, women. He also played a key role in shaping the moral conscience of 19th century political America. He was an orator, editor, advisor to presidents. All of this underscored his belief. If we are going to go down the path of true freedom, the legal sphere and the cultural sphere must all be transformed and engaged. His political affiliations give us a good historical lesson. He was loyal to the Republican Party. And this is grounded in the historical reality. The Republican Party, is in fact the home and origin of abolitionism. The Democratic Party was the political forefront of the pro-slavery South. In fact, the history of the Democratic Party has been mired by the push for preservation of the institution of slavery, so much so that they wouldn't even have accepted him had he requested to join them. And this context is crucial in understanding his life. His unwavering commitment to justice and human dignity is undeniable. Douglass's Christian faith was a profound driving force in his life, and no one can deny that. It shaped his moral vision, his activism, his critique of American society. But his relationship with Christianity was complex. He distinguished sharply between what he called the Christianity of Christ, which came from his reading of the Bible and his interpretation and understanding of it, and the Christianity of this land, as he called it. Now, he had a point here, because the Christianity of the land was skewed by those who utilized Christian tenets to justify the corrupted hypocritical vision that allowed for slavery and racial injustice. Douglass was exposed to Christianity at an early age. His first religious experience came during his time in Baltimore. It was black lay ministers who influenced him, and he was drawn to the teachings of the Bible and began avidly reading it. His conversion deepened his conviction. Slavery was a moral evil, utterly incompatible with the true gospel. And if you want to ask why I'm personally invested in this, is because slavery is a part of my ancestral history as well. And so I have a vested interest in the issue, and I believe the Catholic Church and the Catholic Church's teachings are at the forefront of global abolitionism. And so I want to comment here. Douglass was antagonistic to the Catholic Church. He didn't have kind things to say about it. In his weekly publication, the Douglass Paper, he minces no words. He literally demonized the Catholic Church as a force of evil. And he claimed that it followed popular prejudice, equating Irish Catholicism with popery. And he bragged how he spoke about the prevalence and power of the Christian church and religion at Rome, and of the strange things that are believed and practiced there in the way of religious rites and ceremonies. He was quick to point to the Catholic Church with bringing about the evil that existed in Ireland, ignorance, cunning, crimes, and he associated all of this with Romanism. His accusations were demonstrably misplaced. It doesn't take away from his professed biblical faith, though. His belief in the Christian God was not abstract. It was intensely practical and drove his efforts. He believed that the Christian faith was going to be the only solid foundation for the abolition of slavery. He saw the struggle for freedom as a sacred duty. He grounded his mission in abolitionism in biblical principles. His speeches, his writings frequently invoked the scriptures. He argued slavery violated God's law, and he was right. True Christianity demands justice for the oppressed, and he's right. He called on American Christians to live up to the biblical moral teachings of Christ, rather than twisting religion to justify human cruelty. One of his most scathing critiques of American Christianity is in his narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, and he condemns the slave-holding faith of the South as a perversion of the gospel. He saw religious slaveholders as among the cruelest because they used piety as a mask for their brutality. And so he wrote, "Between the Christianity of this land and the Christianity of Christ, I recognize the widest possible difference. So wide that to receive the one as good, pure, and holy is of necessity to reject the other as bad, corrupt, and wicked." And so he frequently quoted scripture in his speeches and writings. He used the Bible both as a source of moral authority and a tool to expose the hypocrisy of Christian slaveholders. And as I mentioned, he distinguished between true Christianity and the corrupted version that was used in this land to justify slavery. And these are some areas in which he quoted scripture that I actually have an appreciation for. Matthew 23, verses 23 to 24, where Jesus rebukes the Pharisee. They strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. And then he goes, could anything be more true of our churches? And he means this specifically with reference to those who use the scriptures to justify slavery and racial oppression. He therefore criticized religious leaders who focused on minor religious observances, but ignoring the fundamental injustices against human dignity. And so he drew from the Old Testament prophets to preach against them, to emphasize God's justice and certainty of divine retribution against oppression, against human dignity. In his famous speech, "What to the slave is the 4th of July?" he paraphrases Psalm 137. "The arm of the Lord is not shortened, the doom of slavery is certain." And this reflected his deep belief that God's justice would ultimately prevail, even if human institutions and political structures failed. He frequently referenced the story of Moses and the Exodus, as many people in the abolitionist movement did. He saw it as a biblical parallel to the plight of the modern enslaved, in this case African Americans. And so in a speech delivered in 1852, he declared, "The day of Jubilee is breaking, the arm of the Lord is revealed, and the oppressed go free." This was an allusion also to Isaiah 52:10, the concept of the Jubilee year, which we see very distinctly in Leviticus 25, reinforced his conviction. Slavery was and is always incompatible with divine law. One of these days, I'm going to do a separate commentary on understanding what the scriptures mean when it talks about slavery versus the kind of chattel slavery we saw in the founding of America and modern history. Douglass also appealed to a lot of the teachings of Christ, particularly the Golden Rule. So this was Matthew 7, verse 12. He highlighted the moral contradictions of those who defended slavery. "Would you have me to enslave you and your children? If not, why then enslave my brother?" Now, it's a paraphrase, but he's highlighting this particular moral issue. So he framed the issues in terms of Christian biblical ethics, and therefore exposed the inconsistency between early American life and the very Judeo-Christian ideals that the nation was founded upon. And the fact is, the founders were aware of the direction that this new nation and its constitution would lead. They knew that abolition was inevitable, and so they founded this nation knowing that. There's no way of arguing against it. This was the inevitable conclusion of understanding the thought of our founders. And so Douglass's voice wasn't a solitary prophetic voice. It was one prophetic voice amongst many, echoing all the way to the founding fathers the self-same biblical sentiment. All men are created equal and are bearers of the divine image and likeness. And so Douglass never lost hope. He never rejected Christianity itself, far from it. He called for a return to authentic biblical Christian faith, one that championed universal human dignity and true justice. But because of this, when historians write about him, they present a kind of tension, because there's a certain vagueness in how they talk about him. On the one hand, they claim that he anticipated the downfall of slavery because he believed in a just, merciful, and active God. But later, he's described as resisting the simplistic view of divine providence and recognizes, he actually writes a lot about, the weight of the problem of evil. But even recognizing both of these areas, we can say this: Douglass understood, and his Christian faith led him to believe, God would ultimately ensure the triumph of good over evil and of morality over injustice. So yes, he stands as a figure of historical, unwavering hope. He was a pragmatic thinker, an activist. He engaged the harsh reality of his time, and he did so with biblical certitude. That's what we're all called to be in some sense. So the claim that he never wavered in hope is emphasized. The question can remain about the way he manifested his hope, because frequently his own speeches made it seem like his hope was completely absolute and unyielding. Could it have been a rhetorical device? Could it have been really what he believed? Regardless, he saw hope in God's unwavering, unfolding justice. And he knew, he even predicted that events such as the Civil War would lead to the abolition of the heinous institution of slavery, chattel slavery, and the ownership of individuals in the United States. So, if this was the fuel behind the work of people like Frederick Douglass, let us cling to these biblical heritages, and let us stand firm with the truth of Jesus Christ in all areas of our life. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.